Okay, so we've just finished the right side of the skirt, and now we're going to go and attach the left part to the zipper. I started off, after we've pinned this, to just draw a straight line parallel to your fold there, with tailor's chalk. You don't have to do that, but sometimes it makes it a little bit easier to maintain a straight line, especially if your fabric's a little bit shifty. Also, you can choose the angle, so you might want to round this off, or you might want to go straight like this, or perhaps you want to go and have a diagonal that meets where your starting point of the zip is. Okay. Now keep in mind that when you're sewing this, you have the zipper pull here. So sewing over that, you most probably would end up somewhere over there. So what I did is just I put another pin in here to keep this attached, and I'm just undoing this for a moment, so I can sew along here without being pushed aside from the zipper pull. I will have to close this back up as I go along. I'm placing this underneath, and again using my straight stitch with the settings that we have discussed before. I'm now going to sew along my tailor chalk line. As always, back stitching at the beginning and end of your stitch, holding the fabric down so that it gets caught. Pop your needle down, the presser foot up, and let's see whether this time we might be able to move it past. So you can see how this side of the foot is more open than this side, so your zipper pull actually fits under quite easily to open and close on this side. However, on that side you might have to take it out. Okay. Once you've gone the first part, you can close your zip, pull out any of those pins, make sure your fabric lies nice and flat, and then continue sewing. When you get to your angle, lower the needle, lift your presser foot, tilt, keep the fabric nice and flat, and also this likes to pull over to the other side, so just make sure you're holding this down as well as you can, and stitch over the zipper coil until you get to the end where the seams meet. You want to backstitch to keep that locked in place. Now you can take out your fabric and cut your thread. Especially when you're sewing zippers, it's quite important to cut your threads, because you will find that there's nothing more annoying than getting your thread caught in the zipper pull and spending half an hour fiddling it out. So you can see now how my zipper is lapped, so the zipper pull is hidden when the skirt is closed. So this is the back of our skirt. The next thing we want to do is join the side seams together. Take your back pieces, and take your front piece with your back pieces lying good sides facing up. Lay your front piece good sides facing down, so the right sides of the skirt are facing each other. Now all you have to do is match up the seams, the edges of the skirt, and sew the seam. Pin it in place. And when you sew the side seams, if you're not sure whether the pattern will fit you, you might not have sewn it before, and you might not have the standard figure type that fits skirts easily, it might be worth using the longest stitch length on your machine to sew it up. So for example, on this machine I would use the length setting that is the highest. Here would be 4, but it might be different on your machine. And then sew it with the regular seam allowance. That way you can try it on and pin any bits out or let something out, and it'll be so much easier to unpick if you need to make alterations. Because of the long stitch you can just basically pull it out. Then when you repinned it, you can mark the new lines and sew over it. So if it fits perfectly, you can just sew straight over your long stitch with a regular stitch length. You can see how I've pinned the sides together. Make sure you stitch length your straight stitch, and you want to use your normal foot again. So you can put your zipper foot to the side, and your regular presser foot is what you need. So again, this pattern has a 1.5 centimeter seam allowance, but you want to use the seam allowance that is indicated by your pattern company. You backstitch at the end again, and you just follow along the seam allowance. And if you find that your skirt is quite bulky and the fabric pulls along, just make sure you keep repositioning it onto the table so it doesn't shift and pull, getting your seam allowance a little bit out of whack. Backstitching at the end. It is recommended that when you're sewing garments, for the major seams to sew in the same direction, meaning that if you sew down from the top down to the bottom, you should do the same thing on the other side. The reason being is that the seam might just pull slightly different, and you can tell. It's not the end of the world if you don't do that, but for now we might just flip over the skirt and do that just to have it nice and perfect. Again, lining up the edge of your seam with 1.5 centimeters. Backstitching at the beginning. Taking your pins out as you go. And when you get to the end, just backstitch again. So now would be the time to try on your skirt. And like I said, if you used a long stitch and you try it on, you might have to pinch out a bit. Just use some tailor's chalk where you have your pins and mark a new line that you would be using that might either be bigger, where your seam allowance diminishes a little bit, or you might want to take it in a little bit. You can also at that time change the shape of the skirt. For example, if you decide rather than having a straight skirt, you might want to have a bit of a wiggle skirt, you could just pin this and see how it looks, and then draw along to take it in there. Just remember, if you take it in too much and you don't have a vent at the back, that you perhaps won't be able to walk as easily.